Hello and welcome to our Nevada Commission on Ethics training video on improper benefits. There are three main categories of ethics violations: improper benefits, disclosure and abstention, and cooling off. And so this video is going to dive deeper into the details about those ethics rules that relate to receiving an improper benefit. A public office is a public trust and shall be held for the sole benefit of the people. This is part of the Nevada Commission on Ethics legislative declaration. It is in our law. And if you remember one thing from this video, remember this phrase: the public office is a public trust and shall be held for the sole benefit of the people. When we talk about individuals getting into ethics trouble because of the improper benefits bucket of ethics rules, it's because they're using their public office not for the sole benefit of the people, but for either the sole benefit of themselves or the sole benefit of their friends. They're not using that public office for the sole benefit of the people, and that is where they run afoul of the ethics rules related to improper benefits. So again, we've got those three categories: improper benefits, disclosure, abstention, cooling off. The improper benefit bucket is by far the largest. There's more rules about improper benefits than there are about disclosure and abstention and cooling off. So this will be the meatiest chunk of the ethics law, is that improper benefits area. Although there's lots of different rules, there's a very basic formula for what will likely become a violation of the ethics law. And that is, if you are using your government position to create a benefit, and that benefit is for yourself, for someone who you have a commitment in a private capacity to. Remember, that's someone on your magical list of relationships that's established in the ethics law, or you're providing that benefit as the result of a gift or a loan. So if those three things are present, you're likely violating the ethics law, although the ethics law has lots of different kind of nuanced rules about each of those. So here's some of them, and we can walk through them. These are, of course, summaries. You can find the entire actual full language of the law in the statute, but these are just some easy ways to summarize what those rules are. So the first one: you cannot get an economic opportunity for yourself using your public position, right? You're prohibited from taking your public position and creating an economic opportunity. What does that mean? You can't be having, meetings in your government office about, maybe your private business, or using a meeting related to your public service as a way to leverage into an interview to some other job or lucrative deal for yourself, right? You cannot be hunting out financial gain for yourself using your public position. The second one is unwarranted privileges, preferences, exemptions, or advantages using your position. And the important thing here is that the statute defines unwarranted as without merit or unjustified. And although it's nice to have those extra words, it can be difficult to figure out what that actually means in terms of maintaining compliance with the ethics law. When the Ethics Commission receives a complaint related to this unwarranted privileges section of the ethics law, we'll take a real hard look at what those local agency policies and practices are to determine if it's truly an unwarranted privilege. I'll give you an example. If you're a state employee and you go travel, let's say you're from Vegas, you go up to Reno for work, the state will pay for your hotel and your food and your rental car. Members of the public may say, hey, that's an unwarranted privilege. I would like to go on a trip and have my hotel paid for and my food paid for. So they may say, hey, I think this is an ethics violation. This individual is getting all these private benefits based on their public position. But we know that there's specific policy in place that says, hey, if you are out there doing the business of the government and you have to travel, your government agency will reimburse you for that. There's lots of rules around the GSA rate for what type of hotel you can have, and reimbursement limits for meals. But as long as you're following your local policy, it's unlikely that that is going to be an unwarranted privilege, preference, or exemption. So just know that you want to be careful that you're not using your public position to give you unwarranted privileges or preferences, but that when the Ethics Commission sees this particular violation alleged, we'll take a close look at your local policies and practices to determine if there's a legitimate government reason for you to be receiving that particular preference or privilege. The next one is that you can't negotiate a contract with yourself or others with the current agency. And so this makes a lot of sense, right? We don't want members of a public agency going into a contract negotiation and essentially being able to make some sort of money on the other side. Because when you go into a contract negotiation, you're supposed to be 100% for your team, right? You go to bat for your team. And if you have an interest in the other side of that negotiation, you're not going to be going into that negotiation for the sole benefit of the people. You're likely to not get the people the best deal because you're benefiting on the other end. So there's a very specific prohibition on negotiating a contract with yourself or others. You cannot use influence over a subordinate to benefit yourself or others. We see a couple of different examples. One would be if a individual is using, say, the front desk receptionist. Let's say we have like a city council person and they're using the front desk receptionist to mow their lawn and watch their kids and do a bunch of things that benefit that city council person's individual benefit. That's obviously using influence over a subordinate to benefit yourself. You cannot get an honorarium for speaking, and I mostly include this in the improper benefits bucket, just to let you know that you cannot receive cash or benefits just for going and speaking or appearing at a particular event. There are lots of exceptions in the ethics law, so you should look them up in terms of honorarium. So for example, let's say you're a county commissioner or you're a member of a local agency and the Chamber of Commerce or some other group invite you to come speak about your agency, speak about your work at, say, their monthly luncheon. You receiving the lunch that everybody else gets for being at that particular function is not going to be considered an honorarium for speaking, right? We're talking about, just like the Kim Kardashian showing up at the club and getting paid to drink and party type of situation, which is rare. But you want to be aware if someone's offering to pay you for speaking and you're speaking on behalf of the government, you'll want to really check with your agency attorney to make sure that you're staying within those exceptions to the honorarium rule. And then the last one is, and it's in a kind of a different spot in the ethics law, but you cannot, as a public officer or employee, you cannot contract with another agency or your own agency. So let's say that you work for Elko County. And you are a public employee in Elko County, you can't, as like secondary employment, enter into like a contract relationship with White Pine County. There is a provision in the law that allows you to come ask the Ethics Commission for relief from the strict application, and there's a 3-factor test to determine if we should allow you to do that. But just know that in general, if you're a public officer or employee, you cannot be involved in contracts with other government agencies, and especially your own agency. So those are some of the, what I'd say, the miscellaneous. Those are the improper benefit items we see a lot, but that are not too overly complicated to understand. Next, we're going to dive into really some of the ones we see the most, and that have nuances we want to go to into more detail. So before we do that, let's remember that basic formula. You're using your government position to create a benefit for yourself or someone that is on your magical list of relationships. So let's watch our friend Tom from Parks and Rec and see if he's doing okay or if maybe he's violated those rules.
Traegermeister! You made it!
Yeah, I got your email. We need to talk.
First off, though, try a little snake juice.
I believe an ounce of that would literally kill me. You emailed everyone at City Hall and told them to come to a club that you own to buy alcohol that you invented. Government employees can't use their power to enhance their personal wealth.
I totally get your point, Chris. It won't happen again.
Okay, so in this particular example, Tom has used his government email to create a benefit, right? Snake juice sales at his private club to benefit himself. Now let's give Tom more credit than he deserves. Let's say he has a LLC that operates the club. He has a commitment in a private capacity to that LLC, and so he has violated the improper benefit bucket of the ethics law. One of the ethics provisions that we see a lot of complaints about, and I think is one of the ethics rules that is more easy for folks to stumble into, right? They don't have evil intention in their heart, but they they violate the ethics law because they have used government time, property, equipment, or other facility to benefit a significant personal or pecuniary interest. The example I like to give for this particular type of violation is say you have an accounting clerk who works at your agency, and she is running an Etsy shop right out of her cubicle. She's got the glue gun plugged in. She's got her invoices up on her, city computer. She's having the mailroom guys, ship out all of her custom doilies or whatever it is she might be making for her Etsy shop. She's clearly using government time, property, equipment, or other facility to benefit a significant personal or pecuniary interest. Whenever I talk about this provision of the ethics law, I also like to give the example of, let's say it's a little bit after the first of the month, you realize you forgot to pay rent, you hop on your computer at work, pay your rent, and then go back to your job. And a lot of folks say, oh, I don't think that's probably an ethics violation, but the answer is it could be, right? You are using a government equipment, your computer, to benefit your significant personal interest in maintaining housing, and so under this provision of the ethics law, you may have violated the ethics law. What the improper benefit, this government resources section of the ethics law has within it is that there's a limited use exception. The ethics law realizes that life happens. The ethics law doesn't make you, lose your humanity just because you've chosen public service. And so that use of government property equipment may be allowable under the ethics law as long as these 4 conditions are met. First, it has to be properly authorized by a policy allowing the use, or if the use is a result of an emergency. So if you think about the rent example, if you have a computer policy that allows you to do nominal personal work, then that may be a perfectly appropriate use, right? But we'd have to take a look at, does your agency have a policy that allows that use? Most agencies have computer policies that say, here's the use. You can use it for, nominal items. You can't be selling drugs on our state computers. You can't be looking at pornography. You can't be downloading viruses. So make sure you understand what your agency's policy is to see if in that rent example, you could do that kind of limited transaction, and if that would be allowed. And then again, if it's a result of emergency, let's say you're at work and you get a call, your daughter broke her leg playing football at recess, and you have to spend some of your time helping to coordinate that, emergency medical care. If there's some sort of emergency that requires it, you'll meet this first prong of the limited use exception. The second one is that it can't interfere with the performance of your officer's public duties. The example I like to give is, let's say you're in a rural fire station and there's a policy that says, hey, as long as the fire truck is fueled up and the fire station is clean and ready to go, you can kind of do whatever you want to benefit your personal interests. And so you have a firefighter who likes maybe TikTok, right? So they're a TikTok star, and while she's waiting around the firehouse, she's working on her TikToks, right? And so that could be totally allowed under the policy until there's a fire down the street and she doesn't go fight it, right? Then there would be an ethics violation. The cost of the value has to be nominal. So if you think about the rent example, right, the cost of the 3 minutes of internet connection to pay your rent is nominal compared to the cost of internet and computer services for the entire agency for the year. And then finally, it cannot create the appearance of impropriety. And the best example we have of this under the ethics law is individuals who use a government uniform to help their political campaign. You have a personal interest in your own political campaign and others' political campaigns. And so even if your agency allows it under a policy, obviously that doesn't interfere with your duties, right? Just showing up in uniform, you already have the uniform. So the cost is nominal, but the Ethics Commission has stated that having it so that individuals are using their government uniform or other trappings of their office to benefit a personal campaign creates the appearance of impropriety, because our system is based on the people getting to choose who runs our government, not government agencies telling people who they should vote for their particular to run their government. The other example would be, let's say that firefighter TikToker star, if all of her TikToks are about how to start fires and beat an arson investigation, obviously that would create an appearance of impropriety because it's exactly contrary to what her public duty is. So that's the government resources section, this 281A 407 and the limited use exception. The big takeaway here is understand what your policy is for use of equipment, right? If you're a law enforcement agency, you probably have take-home cars. What are the rules? You can probably swing by 7-Eleven, get a Slurpee in July, but you probably can't load your family up and drive across the country to Disney World, right? So you want to make sure you understand your policy. If you're an agency leader, you want to make sure that you have a policy in place that makes those restrictions clear to protect your employees from an ethics violation. Remember, all 4 of these conditions have to be met. You can't just pick one and say, ooh, I'm exempt from this particular part of the ethics law. Another government resource that is not as obvious as, say, a car or your computer at work is information. And as public officers or employees, you have access to information. Some of that is non-public, some of it's supposed to be public. And so the ethics law says, if you use non-public information to benefit yourself or others, or if you suppress a government report to benefit yourself or others, that can be an ethics violation. So one time we were training, I think PERS, right, the state retirement system, and the example we came up with in that training was, a PERS employee gets this list and contact information for all of these recent retirees. Well, if your dad runs a retirement home and you hand all that non-public information off to him, so he can send them marketing materials in the mail to benefit him financially, that's going to be a violation of this use of information part of the ethics law. I don't have a great example for you that has happened in terms of the suppression of a government report, but I would just say if you get a public records request or you're supposed to by law produce a report, as long as you're complying with that and you're making sure that all of the report is consistent, you're not hiding anything, then you'll be fine in terms of that part of this use of information part of the improper benefits bucket. The final topic is campaign season. The ethics law has a specific provision that says no requests for or expenditures for candidates or ballot initiatives are permitted by using government resources. So you cannot, for example, make your agency cut a campaign check to someone. Obviously that's not going to happen, but think about the different ways that your agency spends money, and if that money then goes to support a candidate or ballot initiative, it can be a violation of the ethics law. One of the examples we have is a school board trustee who used the school board, the school district system to send out an email in support of a particular ballot initiative, right? So they used government resources. So it not only implicated this part of the ethics law because you're spending money for your email, but also the part about using the government equipment. And so that was a violation under the ethics law. One of the most famous ethics cases was against former state controller Kathy Augustine. Kathy Augustine was running for re-election and was using her Carson City office in the Capitol as her re-election headquarters. Essentially, she was making copies and sending emails and using staff to support her re-election campaign. And so the Ethics Commission investigated that complaint, ended up finding she did indeed violate the ethics law. The finding of a willful violation of the ethics law require the Ethics Commission to refer it to the legislature, and that controller was impeached. I don't think she was removed from office, but she was impeached based on that ethics violation. So that's it for this improper benefit bucket. Remember that basic formula. If you're using your government position to create a benefit, and that benefit is not for the general public, but that benefit is for yourself, someone on your magical list of relationships, or because you got some sort of gift or loan, then there's going to be an ethics part of the law that will get you in trouble. And so, of course, feel free to contact us if you have additional questions about this improper benefit bucket. You can see additional educational resources on our Twitter and our LinkedIn. Thank you for taking the time to learn about the improper benefit bucket today and learning more about Nevada's ethics law.